Imagine finding a dusty old box under your couch that drags you into a mystery you never saw coming. Me and my brother hit the road, chasing clues from a grandpa we thought was long gone. 3 hours later, we're staring at a house that's supposed to hold all the answers until a creak behind us changes everything. Stick around, 'cause this twist, you won't believe it. Hey, before we jump into this tale, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button. Ready? Let's roll. I never thought a Saturday morning could flip my life upside down, but here we are. I'm Emily, 28, living in this cozy little house just outside Seattle. It's one of those places where the suburbs stretch out quiet and green, and you can hear the birds chirping if you listen close enough. That day started like any other. I was wiping down the coffee table in the living room, the sun streaming through the big windows, casting these golden patches across the hardwood floor. My playlist was humming through the speakers, some chill indie stuff, and I was in that groove where cleaning almost feels fun. Almost. Then it happened. My rag snagged on something under the couch. I crouched down, squinting into the shadows, and there it was, a beat-up old wooden box. It wasn't huge, maybe the size of a shoebox, but it looked ancient, like it had been sitting there gathering dust since the 90s. The paint was chipped, the edges worn smooth, and there was this faint smell of cedar when I brushed my fingers over it. My heart did this little jump, like I'd stumbled onto buried treasure. I know, sounds dramatic, but you ever get that gut feeling something's about to shake things up? That was me right then. I slid it out, dust bunnies trailing behind, and plopped it on the coffee table. My jeans were already smudged, and I sneezed, loud enough to scare the cat napping on the windowsill. She glared at me like I'd ruined her day, but I was too hooked on this mystery to care. The box didn't have a lock, just a rusty latch that creaked when I nudged it. I hesitated, though. What if it was private? What if it belonged to someone who'd lived here before us? My mind spun with possibilities. Old love letters, a forgotten diary, maybe even some weird family heirloom. But opening it alone felt wrong, like I needed a witness to whatever was inside. "Jake!" I hollered, leaning toward the hallway. My brother's 31, 3 years older, and he's got this laid-back vibe that balances out my chaos. He was out in the garage, probably tinkering with that old bike he swears he'll fix one day. I heard the clatter of tools, then his boots thudding across the floor. He poked his head in, wiping greasy hands on a rag, his sandy hair sticking up in every direction. "What's up, Em?" he said, eyeing the box like it might bite. "Check this out," I said, patting the table. "Found it under the couch. Looks old, right?" He raised an eyebrow, that half smirk he does when he thinks I'm overreacting. "Another one of your treasure hunts?" he teased. But he stepped closer anyway, curiosity flickering in his eyes. I grinned. "Maybe. Wanna bet it's something cool?" He chuckled, dropping onto the couch beside me. "All right, let's see what you've dragged up this time." I flipped the latch, and the lid groaned open. Inside, it was a mess of shadows and shapes. Nothing obvious at first, just a jumble of stuff. Jake leaned in, and I caught a whiff of motor oil off his shirt. "Well," he said, nudging me, "you gonna dig in or just stare at it?" I took a breath, my fingers hovering. This wasn't just about the box anymore. It was about that itch in my gut, telling me life was about to throw me a curveball. And I'm not one to back down from a pitch. I reached in, pulling out a stack of faded photographs, the kind with those scalloped edges you see in old movies. They were black and white, some yellowed at the corners, and the faces staring back were strangers, smiling, posing, caught in moments I couldn't place. Underneath, there was a folded piece of paper, thick and creased, like it had been handled 100 times. My pulse kicked up a notch. "Jake, look at this," I said, holding up the note. He squinted at it, then at me. "What's it say?" "Not sure yet," I admitted, unfolding it carefully. The handwriting was shaky, slanted, like whoever wrote it was in a hurry, or maybe just old. I scanned the first line and my breath caught. "To my family," it started. I looked at Jake and his smirk was gone, replaced by this tight, serious expression. Family, he said, voice low. You think this is from Grandpa Ted? Grandpa Ted. The name hit like a brick. We barely knew him. He'd left when I was maybe 5, Jake 8. Mom always said he was a wanderer, never stuck around long. No big stories, no tearful goodbyes. Just a guy who faded out of our lives. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, but my hands were trembling. Could be, I said. Only one way to find out. Jake leaned back, running a hand through his hair. This is nuts, Em. Where'd this even come from? I didn't have an answer, just more questions piling up like laundry I'd been avoiding. No clue, I said. But it's been here, waiting, and now we've got it. I set the note down. The photos splayed out between us. The room felt different now, heavier, like the air was holding its breath. So what's the move? Jake asked, his tone shifting to that big brother mode he slips into when stuff gets real. I chewed my lip, staring at the box. We figure it out, I said, together. But first, tea. I need something to calm my nerves. He laughed, short and sharp. You? Calm? Good luck with that. I swatted his arm, grinning despite the buzz in my chest. As I stood to head for the kitchen, I glanced back at the box. It wasn't just a find. It was a door cracking open, one I hadn't even known was there. And here's the thing about doors. Once you peek through, there's no unseeing what's on the other side. I didn't know it yet, but that moment, me, Jake, and that dusty old box, was the spark. Life's funny like that. You think you're just cleaning the living room and boom, you're on the edge of something big. Something that might just change everything. I grabbed the kettle off the stove and poured hot water into 2 mugs. Mint tea for me, black for Jake. The steam curled up, and I carried them back to the kitchen table where he was already hunched over that old box. The photos and that shaky note from Grandpa Ted were spread out like puzzle pieces we didn't know how to fit yet. I slid his mug over, and he muttered a quick, thanks, without looking up. His fingers tapped the table, a nervous tick he's had since we were kids. So, I said, sitting across from him, you really think this is from him? Jake picked up the note again, squinting at it like the words might change if he stared hard enough. Gotta be, he said. That handwriting, it's messy, but it's got that weird loop on they he always did. Remember those birthday cards he sent before he took off? I nodded, sipping my tea. I did remember. Those cards were the only thing we had from him, always with a crisp $5 bill tucked inside. Back then, I thought he was some big adventurer. Now, I wasn't so sure. I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hand. Okay, but why's it here? Under our couch? We've lived in this place, 4 years? And Mom never mentioned anything about a box. Jake shrugged, flipping through the photos. Beats me. Maybe she didn't know. Or maybe he stashed it way back when. That made my stomach twist. Grandpa Ted hadn't been around since I was little. Why would he hide something in a house we'd only moved into as adults? Let's read it, I said, nodding at the note. Jake cleared his throat and started, his voice low but steady. To my family. If you're reading this, I'm sorry I wasn't there. Had to go, but not because I wanted to. There's things you don't know, things I kept quiet to keep you safe. Look for the house on Willow Lane if you want answers. He stopped, and the kitchen went dead quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. Willow Lane? I said, frowning. That's not around here, is it? Jake set the note down, rubbing his jaw. Nah, I don't think so. Sounds familiar, though. Maybe Oregon? He used to talk about the coast sometimes. I stared at him, my tea forgotten. Safe from what, Jake? What's he talking about? He didn't answer right away, just looked out the window where the afternoon sun was dipping low, painting the backyard gold. Dunno, he finally said. But it's weird, right? All cryptic like some old movie. I laughed, short and sharp, trying to cut the tension. Yeah, like we're in a treasure hunt flick. Next thing you know, we'll be decoding riddles. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. Maybe we already are. That shut me up fast. I grabbed a photo, Some guy with a big grin standing next to a younger Grandpa Ted. They were in front of a house, all weathered wood and wide windows. This could be it, I said, holding it up. Willow Lane, wherever that is. Jake took it, studying it close. Could be. But why is he dropping this on us now? He's been gone forever. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Maybe he didn't mean now. Maybe this was sitting here for years, waiting for someone to find it. That hit us both hard. We sat there, letting it sink in. The idea that this wasn't random, that it was meant for us. I sipped my tea, but it had gone lukewarm, and the mint tasted sharp against the knot in my chest. So what's the deal with keeping us safe? I asked, circling back. Safe from what? Bad weather? A grumpy neighbor? Jake snorted, but his face stayed tight. No clue, Em, but it's got me thinking. Remember how Mom always dodged questions about him? Said he was complicated, and left it at that? I nodded. She'd shut down any talk about Grandpa Ted like it was a door she didn't want opened. You think she knew something? I said. Maybe, he replied, tapping the table again. Or maybe she just didn't want to deal with it. I frowned, picking at a chip in my mug. Well, we're dealing with it now. Question is, what do we do? Jake looked at me, and for a second I saw that big brother glint in his eyes. The one that says he's got my back no matter what. We could ignore it, he said. Toss it back under the couch, pretend it's nothing. I grinned. Yeah, right. You know I'm too nosy for that. He laughed. A real one this time. True. Guess we're stuck figuring it out then. I nodded, feeling the buzz of excitement creep in. Stuck together, I said. Like always. He tilted his mug at me like a toast. Like always. But then he went quiet again, staring out the window. I followed his gaze. Nothing out there but the neighbor's dog sniffing around the fence. What's up? I asked, nudging him with my foot under the table. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Just feels big, you know? Like we're poking at something we might not be ready for. I got that. It did feel big. Bigger than us. Bigger than this little kitchen with its chipped mugs and humming fridge. But I've always believed you don't grow by staying comfy. Maybe, I said. But what's the point of life if you don't poke at the big stuff? Could be a chance to learn something. About him. About us. He looked at me, surprised, then smirked. When did you get all wise? Born that way, I shot back, grinning. He shook his head, but I could tell he was in. The tension wasn't gone. It hung there like steam off the tea, but it wasn't choking us anymore. It was fuel. I picked up the note again, tracing the words with my finger. Willow Lane, I said. Guess we've got some digging to do. Jake nodded, finishing his tea in one gulp. Guess so. But not today, my brain's fried. I laughed. Fair, tomorrow then. Deal? He stood, stretching. Deal. As he headed back to the garage, I stayed at the table, the note in my hand. It wasn't just paper. It was a thread, tugging us somewhere. And I couldn't wait to see where it led. The sun was gone by the time Jake and I hauled that old box into the living room. I flicked on the lamp, its warm glow spilling across the couch where we dumped the photos and Grandpa Ted's note. Outside, the Seattle suburbs had settled into that quiet evening hum, crickets chirping, a car rumbling by now and then. I plopped down, cross-legged, and grabbed the stack of pictures. Jake sat next to me, cracking his knuckles like he does when he's antsy. All right, I said, holding up the first photo. Let's see what we've got. It was Grandpa Ted, younger, maybe in his 30s, laughing with some guy I didn't recognize. They were standing in front of a house, all weathered wood and big windows, just like the one we'd spotted earlier. I flipped it over. No date, no names, just a faded Willow Lane scribbled in pencil. There it is again, I said, passing it to Jake. He nodded, his brow furrowing. Yeah, that's gotta be the place he meant. I reached for the note next, unfolding it quick. Let's hear it again, I said, and started reading aloud. To my family. If you're reading this, I'm sorry I wasn't there. Had to go, but not because I wanted to. There's things you don't know, things I kept quiet to keep you safe. Look for the house on Willow Lane if you want answers. I stopped, letting the words hang there. Jake leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Safe from what, Em? He said, voice tight. That's the part that's bugging me. I set the note down, my fingers tapping the couch. Me too. Like, what was so big he had to ditch us? And why hide it in a box? Jake picked up another photo, Grandpa Ted with a woman this time, both of them smiling on a porch swing. Maybe it's not about us, he said. Maybe it's about him, something he got mixed up in. That hit me like a slap. I'd always pictured Grandpa as this lone wanderer, drifting off because he couldn't sit still. But what if it wasn't that simple? You think he was running from something? I asked. Jake shrugged, flipping the photo over. Nothing on the back. Could be, or hiding something. Either way, he's pointing us to that house. I grabbed my phone off the coffee table and pulled up a search. Willow Lane, Oregon, I muttered, typing fast. A few clicks later, I had it. A little coastal town, maybe 3 hours south of here. Found it, I said, showing him the screen. Tiny place near the beach. Jake's eyes lit up. That's it. He loved the coast. Used to ramble about it when I was a kid. I grinned, the pieces clicking. So, this house? It's real, and he wants us to go there. I grabbed the note again, scanning it. But why? What's waiting for us? Jake leaned back, rubbing his neck. Answers, I guess. Or more questions. I laughed. Great. A road trip for a mystery prize. Then it got quiet. Just the lamp buzzing faintly and the crickets outside. I stared at the photos, all those frozen smiles, and felt this weird ache. Jake, I said, you ever wonder why Mom never talked about him? He nodded slow. All the time. She'd just say he was gone and change the subject, like it hurt too much, or scared her. I chewed my lip. You think she knew about this? Whatever he was keeping us safe from? He didn't answer right away, just stared at the note. Maybe, he finally said. Or maybe she was in the dark too. That stung. Mom's been gone a couple years now, and the thought she might have carried some big secret, or been left out of one, made my chest tight. Well, I said, shaking it off. We're not in the dark anymore. He left this for us. Jake smirked. Yeah, like a breadcrumb trail. Guy could have just called. I snorted. Right? But no, we get the cryptic scavenger hunt. I picked up another photo. Grandpa Ted alone this time, leaning against an old truck, looking serious. He doesn't look happy here, I said, holding it out. Jake took it, nodding. Yeah, different vibe. Wonder what changed. I tapped the note. This did. Whatever he's hinting at, it's heavy. Jake set the photo down, his jaw tight. So we're doing this? Going to Willow Lane? I didn't even hesitate. Heck yeah, you? He grinned, that big brother grin that says we're a team. I'm in, but we're splitting gas. I laughed, shoving his shoulder. Deal, but I call shotgun. He rolled his eyes. You always do. For a second, it felt light, like we were kids planning a fort instead of chasing a ghost from our past. Then I grabbed the note again, reading that line one more time. Things I kept quiet to keep you safe. It stuck with me, like a splinter. Jake, I said, what if this is bigger than we think? Like, not just family stuff? He looked at me, serious now. Then we figure it out, step by step. I nodded, but inside my mind was racing. What kind of guy leaves his family, hides a box, and drops a bombshell like that? And what kind of grandkids are we, diving in head first? I set the note down, glancing at the photos scattered around us. You know, I said, this could teach us something. About him, sure, but maybe about us too. Like why we're the ones who found it. Jake raised an eyebrow. Getting deep on me, Em? I grinned. Just saying, life's weird. Throws you curveballs and you either swing or duck. He chuckled. Guess we're swinging. The lamp flickered and I glanced out the window, stars popping out in the dark. Tomorrow, I said. We start digging. Google, maps, whatever. We're cracking this. Jake nodded, standing up. Tomorrow it is. But I'm crashing soon. This is too much for one night. I laughed. Wimp. He flicked my arm as he passed. Night nosy? I stayed there, staring at the box. It wasn't just stuff. It was a window, and we'd just pried it open. Willow Lane was calling, and I had this gut feeling. Whatever we'd find there, it'd change the game. Not just for Grandpa Ted, but for us. The next morning hit me like a breath of fresh air. I was up early, perched on the back porch of our Seattle house, cradling a mug of coffee. The sun was just peeking over the fence, turning the grass all dewy and gold. Jake stumbled out a minute later, his hair a mess, clutching his own mug like it was a lifeline. "Morning," he grumbled, dropping into the chair next to me. I grinned. "You look like you wrestled that box all night." He snorted. "Felt like it. Kept dreaming about Willow Lane." I took a sip, the warmth cutting through the crisp air. Same. Couldn't stop thinking about Grandpa Ted. Why he'd send us on this wild goose chase. Jake nodded, staring out at the yard. "Yeah, that note's stuck in my head. Keep you safe." "From what?" I shrugged, setting my mug on the railing. "Guess we'll find out. So, road trip?" He smirked, that spark lighting up his eyes. "Road trip." We got moving fast. I grabbed my laptop and we sprawled out on the porch table, plotting the drive to that little Oregon town. 3 hours, I said, pulling up the map. We could leave tomorrow, be there by lunch. Jake leaned over, squinting at the screen. "Works for me. I've got a day off, and you?" I nodded. "Same. Let's pack light. Rucksack, snacks, done." He laughed. "You and your snacks, always prepared." I grinned. "Hey, you'll thank me when you're starving on the highway." We spent the next hour hashing it out. Gas stops, a quick detour for coffee in Portland, the usual. The buzz was real, like we were kids planning a secret mission. "Think we'll find that house?" I asked, scrolling through some grainy pics of the town online. Jake shrugged. "Gotta. It's the whole point, right?" I nodded, but my gut twisted a little. "Yeah, but what if it's... I don't know, not what we expect." He looked at me, serious for a sec. "Then we deal. Like always." That's the thing about Jake. He's steady when I'm all over the place. I leaned back, sipping my coffee. "You ever think about what this means? Like, us doing this?" He tilted his head. "What, chasing Grandpa's ghost?" I laughed. "Yeah, feels like we're digging up more than a house. Maybe who we are too." He smirked. "Deep stuff, Em. But yeah, could be a chance to figure out where we fit in all this." The coffee was cooling off, but the vibe was warm. I loved these moments. Me and Jake just talking it out. "Okay," I said, clapping my hands. "Bags packed by tonight, we roll out at dawn. Deal?" He raised his mug. "Deal? But I'm driving first." I groaned. "Fine, but no country music." He laughed. "No promises." We finished our coffee, the plan locked in. I stood, stretching, and looked out at the yard. "This is gonna be epic," I said. "Like, best adventure ever epic." Jake grinned, standing too. "Better be. I'm not hauling my butt to Oregon for nothing." I shoved him playfully. "Oh, it'll be something. Bet you $10 we find that house in under an hour." He shook his head. "You're on." The rest of the day flew by, packing, grabbing granola bars, double-checking the route. By night, I was buzzing, barely able to sleep. Dawn came quick, and we were off, the car humming down the highway, Seattle fading in the rearview. Jake cranked some old rock, not country, thank God, and I munched on pretzels, watching the trees zip by. "You nervous?" I asked, glancing at him. He kept his eyes on the road. "A little. You?" I nodded. "Yeah, but excited too. Like, what's waiting for us?" We hit the Oregon coast by noon, the air salty and sharp. Willow Lane wasn't hard to find, a quiet street, lined with old houses, waves crashing nearby. We parked, grabbed the photo, and started walking. "That's it," Jake said, pointing. There it was. The house from the picture, weathered but standing, windows glinting in the sun. My heart raced. "Holy crap," I said. "We did it." We stepped up to the porch, and I knocked. Light, unsure. No answer. Jake tried the bell. Nothing. "Empty?" I said, peering through a window. Looked like it. No furniture, just dust. "Weird," Jake muttered. Then I noticed it. A mailbox stuffed with letters spilling over. I grabbed one, my hands shaky. Addressed to Ted, I said, showing him. He lived here, recently. Jake frowned. Then where's he at? I didn't know, but the stack of mail, unopened, yellowed, felt heavy in my hands. Maybe he's still out there, I said. Or maybe he left this for us to find. Jake nodded slow. Another breadcrumb. I laughed, nervous. Yeah, guy's a pro at this. We sat on the porch steps, the ocean roaring in the distance. So what now? I asked. Jake rubbed his neck. Dig deeper? Track him down? I nodded, feeling that pull again. Yeah, this isn't the end. It's the start. He grinned. You're hooked, huh? I smirked. Aren't you? He didn't argue. Then it happened. I flipped through the mail, just messing around, and a small envelope slipped out. Newer, cleaner, postmarked last week. My breath caught. Jake, I said, voice shaky. Look. He grabbed it, tearing it open. Inside, a single line in that same shaky handwriting. I'm closer than you think. We froze, staring at each other, the world tilting. Then, behind us, the porch creaked, loud, deliberate. I whipped around, heart in my throat, and there he was. Grandpa Ted, alive, older than the photos, standing in the doorway, eyes wide. You found me, he said, voice rough, and I gasped, the mail scattering as everything I knew shifted in one wild, impossible second. If you loved this, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, drop a comment, and pass it along to your buddies. This is an artistic and fictional creation intended for both entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or events is purely coincidental. Some scenes and dialogues in the video are part of a dramatized performance and incorporate elements of grotesque, satire, and exaggeration. The creator stands against discrimination, violence, and hatred. This channel fully complies with YouTube's policies and does not infringe upon copyright laws.